there.
Hey, well, good afternoon. Walton County Sheriff Mike Adkinson, along with our trusty public information team, Ms. Corey DeBritney and Ms. Lindsay Darby, and we're here for the Sheriff Live. For those of you that are just tuning in, we're Walton County, Florida, halfway between Pensacola and Tallahassee. We run from the Alabama line to the coast, and this is my kind of bi-monthly. This is what we do kind of bi-monthly to report to my bosses, citizens of Walton County, where we try and answer any questions you may have, try and keep you up on some current events. We'll really talk about anything you ask. Go ahead if you have a question, shoot us a question into any of the social media platform, whatever you may be watching us on, Facebook, Instagram, X. I think that's all of them at this point, right, ladies? And YouTube, sorry. And we'll try and answer whatever questions you have. We try to answer our local questions first, but we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. I don't see the questions first, so there's a distinct possibility that I don't know the answer or that I give you the wrong answer, in which case we will try and straighten it out. But if we don't know the answer, we'll try and get you one. So with that, it has been a busy few weeks here in Walton County since we've last been on the air, and a lot of stuff going on, obviously. And, we won't necessarily start in order of importance, but we'll just kind of talk about some of the things going on. And again, go ahead and hit us with any questions you may have, anything that you want to know the answer to that we might can provide you an answer to. Obviously, first and foremost, we'll discuss the shooting in Sandestin. And I think everybody here listening, that if you're familiar with this event, you will understand that there's a limit of what I can say. This is obviously going to be a very lengthy trial process, and there's quite a number of victims. So, we did a press conference. I won't necessarily go over the events as they happen, other than to say this: we continue to review our actions, what was going on, where can we, where do we need to follow up, what things still need to be done. And I think it's an important thing for the public to understand. It's not just the incident. Now we have to prepare for trial. We have to make sure that the state has everything they need, that we, go back and, we were out looking for evidence for multiple days there on the scene in Sandestin around Heron Walk. We're still examining quite a bit of physical evidence, as a matter of fact, and got a brief out this morning from our investigative team. Obviously, they're going to work closely with the state's attorney's office.
Yeah.
I think we added 10 more charges, everything from attempted murder, ag assault with a firearm, to multiple other charges.
So we've got the one count of attempted murder on the original, the first person that we charge him with. We've got 6 counts of shooting into a vehicle, 1 count aggravated assault on a Leo, 9 counts of aggravated assault, and 1 count of aggravated battery. His bond is up to $610,000 now.
To on top of the additional $500,000.
No, total $610,000
bond. There is still additional charges forthcoming. We anticipate a murder charge at some point in the immediate future. But here's what's important, because some people ask us, why haven't we immediately charged that? It's incumbent upon us, it's incumbent upon the state to do this correctly, not to be in a hurry, but take the time to be factually accurate and make sure that we get all our ducks together. So the charges will still be coming, and they'll be charged appropriately. We have a responsibility, the victims in this case and the victim's family, to make sure that we do this right. And so that's what we're working on at this point. So a lot going on that. I'll answer any questions that I can answer, and obviously there's some things I think most people would understand that I just simply cannot comment on.
We've had a couple questions just wondering, and Rebecca off of YouTube and Ashley both just wondering about a motive here. And and you said during the press conference, what's most scary about incidences like this is that it's just random and it's horrible.
I got to be real careful about speaking to motive, because some of this stuff is going to come up at trial. Just simply say the short version of this is that nothing I could tell you of what I understand from motive would make any sense to you. There's nothing that is going to make you say you understand it. I can't wrap my mind around that part of it, but I need to be a little bit careful about speaking of motive, other than to say this: there's no contact between any of these victims and the suspect prior. None.
Yeah. And that's one of the scariest parts.
Very, 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 very sad to the family of the deceased, the gentleman that was also injured, shot, that is going to recover. And not to mention, the multiple other people that, listen, were driving home and facing gunfire, and their life was put at immediate risk. It's extremely scary for anybody that you go about your business and you're doing work and to randomly be facing a life or death situation for which you just simply there was no time to prepare. There's nothing they could have done differently. This is a random act of violence.
Yeah. Talk about we since our press conference we released the body cam and dash cam video from the deputy from that day. Talk about that approach and why we choose, because you and I have discussions a lot about releasing video. And obviously in an open investigation where the suspect is still alive, we don't have a requirement to release the video.
So we're not under a statutory requirement to release that. In this particular situation, I think it was so clear cut, and there is a compelling public interest to go ahead and do that we made the decision. I made the decision to go ahead and move forward. It's not an overly graphic video. We were careful about that. We are sensitive to the fact of these are people's family that are watching this. The deputies' families that are involved has to see that as well too. The victim's family in this case. There's just a lot of factors that go into releasing these videos. I get that people want to see this stuff. Some people because they have a genuine concern, interest. They live there, and there's some people that just love the violence of it, right? And so we just we try to balance those needs and get the information out as quickly as we can, but be as accurate. The other thing is we have to be accurate. And so what I don't want to do is tell you something that's not correct. It's super important for us to try and do that.
Yeah.
So, the body cam video, I think what you saw in there, a couple things that are really important that I would isolate. Incredibly professional response by Sergeant Talley, by the deputy on scene with him, the deputies responding. That's about as textbook good as you can do it. Mm-hmm. And we had some genius talking about, well, that wasn't a good shot, and
under duress, in pitch black.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Couch cowboy. We're not really concerned about your opinion, quite frankly. The truth is, it was very professional, very calm. If you see the cadence of shots while under fire, sergeant did not empty his magazine. Mm-hmm. He was very careful, very thoughtful, very aware of the surroundings of people involved. The other thing is when the deputies approached, they didn't unload on him. And if you hear the video going through, they did not unload on him when he was down. They were very careful. His hands were clear. They approached it from a safe, tactical manner. Had he got away from them at that point, had he got into the woods, we're looking at a whole different situation.
Yeah.
And I say we're lucky, but good police work and training made the difference here.
Yeah, they made their own luck.
They made their own luck. Hard work makes luck. We looked at it today. I think there was something in the neighborhood of 9,000 hours that deputies put into training so far this year. 9,000 hours across the agency.
Yeah,
that's a big deal, and that paid off last Thursday night.
Yeah,
bottom line. That paid off last Thursday night.
We have a different question from Melissa about. Can you walk us through? And I don't, this is a point where I should have probably made it a little bit more clear initially. But can you give us like a timeline of where he started out? Was he on foot? Was he in a car? Sure. Like, walk us through how the event began and progressed until he was captured.
So, and again, I'm going to caveat this in that it has to go to trial. And so nothing I say here should be considered of absolute fact in regard to the timeline or what happened. But the short version of this is the subject left the Baytown Wharf area, the businesses down there, around, shortly before 11 p.m., walked that approximately, I will call it a half mile to the roundabout. Mm-hmm. Somewhere before the roundabout, he produces a pistol and starts pointing at vehicles, firing at a couple of different vehicles. Mm-hmm. At some point, he gets to the roundabout there, and as vehicles go through the roundabout from a extremely close distance, he fires into the driver's side of the vehicles at the shooting, attempting to shoot the driver with his handgun there as they slow down to come through the roundabout. So those folks would not have seen him at all, would not have known anything. It's conceivable that some of the people that were hit never saw him. Didn't see anything.
Which
didn't
is
know
even
what
more
happened.
Scary, right?
Which is extremely scary.
You hear something, you're in pain,
and it's kind of my working belief. There were a couple other people that were shot at just simply don't know they were shot at. We see him point at vehicles or golf carts. They don't know they were shot at, or they don't know that how close they came that night. So that's obviously scary for everybody concerned.
Super scary.
But I want to circle back, because I think one of the things that I don't say we forget, but I think it's important to remember, there was a family that got the worst news that you can possibly get that night, and my heart bleeds for them, because I think as a parent, we all know this is the worst thing that you could happen. So it's a young man who's lost his life, and that just there's nothing I can say to make that right or better. What we can try and do is carry out our duties to the best ability from there. But in none of this should we forget the people that are actually suffered, that actually suffered this tremendous loss, as well as the individuals, the victim who was shot, that survived that shooting, and the ramifications of this type of being a victim of this type of violence, whether they suffered injury or not. So there's some really, I just don't want to lose track of those people, because they are the people that are important in this.
Yeah. I'm just going to try to stay on subject for a second. We had initially, Melissa asked why was the shooter originally in Baytown. He was on vacation. He was with friends. They were celebrating a bachelor party.
Whatever reason they maybe they were there on a.
And then Derek Gossett, Derek asked, what are the current charges? We kind of went over that, but just to list them out.
And again, there's a myriad of charges coming. We want to be careful and thoughtful as we charge. We can always add more charges, right? At this point, you have a count of attempted murder. You have 9 to 10 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm. Aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer.
Yep. 6 counts of shooting into a vehicle.
6 counts of shooting into a vehicle. We anticipate a murder charge here, but we need to be correct, because there's obviously being very thoughtful about the charging document, working with the state to make sure we're not in a hurry to do this. We need to do it correctly and professionally.
Sure. And then we had a question about, from Mac Hubley, if a person owns a firearm and then after they purchase the firearm get a medical marijuana card, is that person, do they still own that firearm legally?
Yes.
Yes. And then Benjamin Osborne, excellent job by the deputies involved in the shooting. Over the last couple of weeks, there has been rumors and concerns regarding the budget for the sheriff's office. He didn't really ask a question, but do you want to? Sure.
I think that's one of those things, we were actually talking about this before, and budgets are complicated things, but the short version is we had some people that are putting out absolutely incorrect information, but I can't chase everybody that doesn't maybe like Mike Atkinson, or maybe thinks the budget's too big or whatever. The short version is, and you can double check me, I have a responsibility to be accurate when I say this kind of stuff. As I said the other night at a town hall meeting on the beach, Walton County provides the part of our budget that is public safety, right? Fire rescue, jail, sheriff's office, all those things under the sheriff's office. We're about 20 to 25% less than any surrounding county. It's not even close. You can look at something called the county CAFR. That's the audit reports that each county puts out. And you can look at it kind of really, really quickly. And the math doesn't lie. It is what it is. It's kind of obvious. And it was funny because somebody put out the other day that, Okaloosa County is 57% of ad valorem there, Sheriff, apples to apples. One problem with that. You're not accurate. So, first off, the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office only oversees the law enforcement operations and the judicial services. That's 57%. Their jail, on top of it,
which the sheriff's office does not run.
Which is not reflected in the sheriff's budget there, puts them over about 100% of ad valorem, about 105% ad valorem ballpark. The Walton County Sheriff's Office, if you did apples to apples, just law enforcement and judicial services, we'd be about 30% of the county's ad valorem. So it's kind of a great example. So the person that said that literally made my point for me. They just didn't understand how to read the budget. So the short version is, and you can look this up, Walton County pays less for public safety than any surrounding county by a bunch, percentage-wise. Got a copy of the report. We'd be happy to send it to it. In fact, that was actually prepared for us by a former Okaloosa County Deputy County Administrator. But if you don't care what the facts are, you just maybe you don't like me or whatever. I can't really convince you because you're not concerned what the facts are.
Well, and I think it's important to know too that we're not just over the jail, but we have animal services and fire rescue north of the bay.
Fire rescue. The other thing is, I think a lot of times people get confused about this. They'll say, well, you're 67, the majority of the county budget, and that's absolutely not true. The county budget is $317 million. $317 million. The sheriff's office budget is about $95 million, give or take, right, from ad valorem. So we're about 30% of the county's total budget, but that is also fire, EMS, paramedicine, the jail, communications, animal control, and law enforcement operations, plus judicial services. So it can be a little misleading, but you got to make sure, because when you see it, you just see sheriff's office. So that's really pretty good. So we're actually pretty pleased, and it's funny because these are one of the things that we really should be advertising and say, look, we do this a lot cheaper than anybody else. But but I can't help you if you can't read the budget. If you think that us and Okaloosa have the exact same percent of ad valorem, I'm not sure how to help you.
Yeah. Marcia off of YouTube says, hello, Sheriff and everyone. I'm planning to be in Santa Rosa Beach within the next 2 weeks. Is there anything I need to be aware of? What's going on, especially in Seaside, if I'm not staying in Seaside?
No, I mean, Walton County's a very safe county. It's a place that it's a really good community that is supportive of its public safety. It's in Seaside, South Walton Fire District, and Walton County Sheriff's Office. Have a great working relationship. I think it's a very safe area. But nothing about that relieves you of your personal responsibility to protect yourself. And I think that's an important thing to remember, right? We're not going to be everywhere all the time. We're going to be there as quick as we can. Like the incident in Sandestin, we had a response time in just about under 3 minutes. That is incredible.
And not to mention that they heard they heard
the gunshots because their windows down. That's an anomaly. Right? It's an anomaly that these things happen. But there's so much that individual citizens can do to protect themselves. So no, there's certainly nothing to be worried about coming to Seaside or coming to South Walton or anywhere in Walton County from that standpoint. But you still need to lock your doors. You still need, if you have a firearm, you still need to make sure to secure your firearm, those kind of things. That's really the main thing. But this is an extremely safe county.
Yeah. Melissa from Facebook wants to know, is the suspect talking to investigators?
I'm going to go with no comment on that one, unfortunately. That's not something you don't hear me say that a whole lot, but I need to be careful about what I say there.
Yeah. Haley Martin says, I commend our law enforcement officers for their swift action. Brittany says, get in front of the camera or shh when he's answering. So I need to shh when you're answering. This is kind of how we run this show. I don't put myself on camera. Keith said, if y'all haven't listened to the Sheriff's podcast, you should check it out. It's really good and informative. Keith, thank you. You just reminded me that we have our third episode out.
So we just dropped another episode of The Art of Policing. That's our podcast. And this episode was on, what did we do last? Constitutional?
Bail and bonds.
We did bail and bonds last. We did the difference about bail and bonds and when people, we hear from you guys a lot. People getting, maybe don't understand, well, why did they only get this amount of bond? Why is there only, why were they released? Those kind of things. So what I tried to do was walk through generally what happens when somebody's arrested, how they're bonded out, how they bail out, what the difference from that is, why some people go to jail at certain arrests and some people don't. And Corey, you and I talk about this, or is that a lot of people think there's something nefarious when somebody goes to jail, but yet somebody else doesn't. And a lot of times there's just a set of rules of how it's handled. So in the podcast,
or the facts are completely different.
Or the facts are different. So in the art of policing, we just kind of sat down and went through bail and bond and what's involved with that. So it's on Spotify,
Apple Podcasts.
You can download it. Is it up on YouTube?
No, you can access the shorts, which are just like little teasers to it, but it's on SoundCloud, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Yeah,
and it's on our website.
Yeah, it's on our website as well. So we have done one on immigration, illegal immigration as it relates to local law enforcement. Mm-hmm. We've now done the bail and bond one as well, and we have done the issues around constitutional or permitless carry and what the difference between all those. So we've got 3 of them out now with stuff that really affects the citizens here in our area.
Very good.
And if you're watching this from out of state, take in mind your laws may be a little bit different, but what we say is generally accurate across the country.
Great. Thank you, Keith, for watching and listening to our podcast. Melissa, going back to our shooting in Sandestin, she wants to know if the victim has been identified in that shooting.
Yes.
By our agency, but we have not publicized that.
We are not releasing that name based on Marcy's law, which is the victims have certain right to be protected. That's decision the surviving victims have to make whether or not they want their name known, and then the family of the deceased, that's their decision. But my job is to try the best I can to protect them, protect their privacy while this process is going on. If they choose to say that is entirely up to them, and we support whatever decision those families choose to make.
Great. James Lawson on Facebook, if you have a bill from the old hospital, can they still take you to court? I'd like to know because I've been trying to pay a bill to the old hospital and they're no longer open.
I am sorry. That's actually going to be above my pay grade. I actually don't know the answer to that. I would suggest, I don't know if the new hospital bought the old hospital account. I just really don't want to give you bad information about that. I would suggest you probably call the new hospital once it's fully open, Dr. Nguyen, Dr. Ward, and those folks, whoever their administrator they hire, and just ask them, let them walk you through. I don't want to point you in the wrong direction.
Okay, and then Rebecca Harris Schmidt, how do we increase Walton County Sheriff's deputies' pay so that we can recruit more experienced deputies from other areas?
Yeah, we actually were so funny. We were talking about this morning. Our goal is to take the salary up to around $56,000-57,000 right now, and then ultimately move it up from there. We have to stay competitive with our local agencies. That's really probably one of the biggest things. So most of the staff, we got a 5%, which we also moved our starting salary up. But I will tell you that's not going to be competitive. So the rate of change is going on so fast. We're looking at trying to do something again, hopefully this budget year. But everybody talks about budget, but that's a great example. So for me, once you tick about, let's call it 5%, that's about $3 million on a budget. So it's pretty significant. But we also think that's important, and we think is obviously families everywhere are struggling with this the new economy and everything's raising quickly. Government can't move as fast. Government has to move slower, and we have to be thoughtful about that. But yes, we are looking at trying. We want to make sure that your deputies, firefighters, dispatchers, detention deputies, all our employees, that they're fair and appropriate and competitive.
Yeah. It's like the new normal.
Yeah, right.
We're just adjusting to it.
Sure.
We just got to take our time. Benjamin on Facebook, with fire rescue encompassed under the sheriff, does this include South Walton as well? If not, how does the budget compare for South Walton and the departments north of the Bay?
Sure.
By the way, great goatee.
I look old, I feel old with it.
You feel like you look old with it?
Just kind of ballpark it, and again, I don't know exact numbers, but I'll give you a little bit of an example. So the sheriff's office, we, different from a lot of places, we put capital expenditures in our budget. What is capital expenditures? It's things like when you spend $1 million for a fire truck, or you spend a few $1 million to build a station, which we're building a couple of fire stations. That's actually included in our budget. In a lot of places, that would be kept separate and put in the county's budget. We just include it in ours because we manage that. So our budget's roughly $95 million, give or take. So I think South Walton Fire Districts is roughly $75 million. So part of theirs is capital in that too. So call theirs 30-something million, 34 million for operating, and another plus, give or take, and don't shoot if I'm factually incorrect, but around 75 million for South Walton, give or take. And ours is 95 for everything else all inclusive. But I also know that they're able to maintain capital monies. In other words, they keep that in their budget. We can't maintain it in our budget. We have to expend the money each fiscal year, and budget each fiscal year for it. So a little bit different budgetary system. We do not run fire rescue south of the Bay. Fire rescue is handled by South Walton Fire District. They do an excellent job with it. Then the county actually a lot of people don't realize this, the county actually contracts with them to do the ambulance service south of the Bay. So in some places, Bay County, Okaloosa County, Leon County, you can have ambulances are in some places separate than fire rescue. And you'll in fact see private ambulance services. I think there's some private in Bay County, as a matter of fact. So the Board of County Commissioners contracts with South Walton Fire District to provide ambulances south of the bay along with the fire service, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit different setup, right? But listen, those guys down here do a very good job of providing a high level of service. They're also handling some lifeguard. They handle lifeguards south of the bay as well too. So.
Okay. Going to Beth Niblett is watching. She's one of your employees. Derek Gossett, typically how long does it take for ballistic results to come back? Is that one of the ingredients being waited on to connect the scenes together in the shooting?
So, unfortunately, given the short answer is yes, but it's not going to be the end-all, be-all in this particular case because of some other evidentiary things we have. We will try and wrap up all to make sure that those rounds came from that weapon. Obviously, we believe they did, but we have to be accurate and sure. So we're trying to account for every round fired by the suspect and fired by the deputy, which we have to do. That will take a period of time, but we're a long way from trial, obviously. So I guess the short answer to that is yes, but it's not the most compelling thing that we're looking at this point.
Yeah.
But ballistics take a long, long time.
Shirley Jordan, what is the status of open containers at Silver Sands Outlet Mall? There are a lot of people walking around with alcoholic beverages in the stores while shopping.
That's a BPR question. I actually do not know the answer to that. I think individual businesses can make a decision what they allow in or out. There's something called a COP8 license. I don't like acronyms, by the way. I actually don't know what that is. It has to do consume beverage on premise license. I think is what it actually stands for.
Look at you.
So yeah, how about that? But typical businesses make that decision. They should not necessarily be allowing the alcohol in the store. Certainly, if they sell alcohol themselves. So it just depends on what the store situation is. We don't have an open container ordinance in the county. If that's what you're asking, just to be kind of clear about that.
Is Silver Sands, just for my edification, even though we don't have an ordinance,
so
it's private property.
It's private property, so they can make decisions based on how they want to do that. And I suspect each individual store has a set of rules in their lease. I just don't know what they are from there. If they were selling alcohol, that would be different. There's a different set of rules when you sell alcohol.
Marilyn Wheelot, we had some vehicle burglaries in Villa Tasso and tried to get the county to put up a security light. They had to check crash report data since there have been no accidents at that intersection for the last 3 years. They won't do it. It's kind of crazy because vehicles have headlights. I was just asking for security light as well. So she wanted sort of a street light, I'm guessing?
You know what we can do? We'll follow up and ask Public Works what the status of that is. Your district lieutenant is Bart Smith. He's based there out of Freeport. We run that what we call District 2 is everything from the Choctaw line to the river, basically. And so Lieutenant Smith does a very good job of trying to stay on top of this. And I will follow up with him and Public Works to see what the possibilities are there. I'm generally in favor of those kind of things. I think there are a lot of little things like lighting and just some environmental design stuff that you can do that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. Stanislav Nikolov is asking, is the deputy involved in the shooting going to be promoted?
No, we don't actually. No, we actually don't promote along that way. But obviously, a very professional job on his part. Really, everybody involved.
Yep. Shelby Parrish, the speeding down Tropical Way in Freeport has gotten ridiculous. Most of the speeders live down Bay Grove Drive, mostly after dark.
Duly noted. We'll see about trying to put some folks out there from our traffic unit as well too.
And then somebody on YouTube, username Bird Dog, when will Sheriff Posse stop writing tickets to beach vendors trying to unload at beach accesses?
I'm not sure. Can you clarify? We don't do county ordinances, so I'm not exactly sure what he's referencing.
And are you sure it's the posse and not?
Yeah, you may be talking about code enforcement.
Yeah.
We don't do the sheriff's posse folks who do a fabulous job for us. We don't do county ordinances, so that there may be a little bit of confusion with that with code.
Merle Meggs, was the person found in front of Ascension Sacred Heart whose car caught fire officially found to be a victim in the shooting. I didn't see any charges related to that on the link.
Yeah, we're waiting on producing charges to get all our facts together so that we're charged, so that charge is added appropriately. But yes, every indication that is directly related is a victim of the shooting spree.
Okay. And then Margaret Lowry Cumby is asking, when is a good time to have a meeting with you? She's called to have a meeting several times, but have yet to get a meeting with the sheriff.
Typically, my assistant, Allie Lytle, schedules that, and just whenever, I mean, we have, obviously quite a lot of people that call, and we try to make sure that we get them all in. But sometimes their schedules don't match our schedules, and there's certainly some of that as well, too. We always ask that if it's something that where somebody can try and resolve it first, that may give you an answer quicker and better than I will, that we at least know what the problem is. Because a lot of people call and say, they won't tell us anything. They just say, I want to talk to you. It's a little bit harder for us because then I will meet with you and I won't even know what you're talking about, have to do some research, figure out, and then maybe somebody is better to answer your question. But the short version of that is if you can get with Ms. Lytle, my executive assistant, they'll see about getting you scheduled.
Great. Yasir Salinas is asking, there's a lot of illegal immigrants in the area. What would be the best way to help them?
There's a couple of things, and I think regardless of where you fall on the issue of illegal immigration, right? One of the things that is not talked about a lot, that is really not mentioned at all, is that they are also at a high propensity to be victimized themselves because they are less likely to contact the sheriff's office or policing agencies. I would say probably the number one thing in that community is to make sure that you have someone in that community that is a point of contact that can speak to us, that is willing to talk to the sheriff's office, particularly when they are victims of crimes, right? We try to develop community contacts where we can, but I would say that's probably the number one thing is there has to be communication. Regardless of how you feel about the situation, there has to be communication to help. That's really the main thing. I would say in any part of that community, or really any community where English is a second language, there has to be somebody that can act as a conduit to work between us to help facilitate it.
Yeah. Great question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
And then Merle said, thank you. She was in the hospital the night of the shooting and felt very safe. Tammy Stevens Jonas is asking if the shooter was found to be on drugs, what type of drugs.
I can't comment on any of that.
Yeah, and talk about why that's so important for an investigation.
Yeah, I mean, so this thing is going to trial, right? And in trial, you're entitled to a defense, and any statement I say that is not factually accurate is, subject to a problem. And our job is to help provide justice for the victims in this case. So I have to be very careful about the statements I make to make sure that I'm factually accurate. And that really, that's true about trial, but it's also true about everything. It's kind of like we were talking about budget. When I say things like that, it has to be accurate. Unfortunately, I don't get to just type whatever I want or say whatever I want. I have an obligation to be as accurate as I can. So whether it's something as serious as a murder investigation, or if it's something that is maybe more politically minded or more ordinance minded, it's my opinion, I'll tell you it's an opinion. If I tell you it's a fact, I better be right. And that's kind of where I'm always very careful with my words.
Yeah. Shirley,
and then I'll say something stupid. So, there's that.
Shirley,
Lindsay laughs, but it's true.
Oh, Shirley Jordan, thank you for your answer. Can people panhandle on the corners at Walmart and Publix? Do we have a panhandling ordinance?
We do not have a panhandling ordinance.
Okay.
We need one.
Adam Ramsey, would it be silly for someone with no law enforcement experience going into their 40s to apply for a deputy position?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've hired deputies in their late 50s, and we don't discriminate based on age. It's really, listen, you need to have a servant's heart. You need to be willing to learn. You need to know how to communicate with people, and you need to be able to remain calm in a stressful situation. Those are really the elements of a good deputy sheriff, in my opinion. That's not restricted on age. You also have to be able to take care of yourself. I mean, I am probably the most community service oriented and believe in a servant's heart of doing this business. But I'm not going to mislead you. You have to be willing to visit violence on someone. I know that's a bad choice of words. My PIOs probably split there, but the truth is, as you saw last week and you see this is a business that can be extremely unforgiving. and everybody can tell you how they're going to do it until it's time to do it. So that's a question you have to answer yourself, but your age is not relative to me, and that's irrelevant to me in that standpoint.
Yeah. Some of our best.
You have some good life. You have some good life experience.
Yeah, some of our, and that's just what I was about to say. Some of our best deputies,
Sure.
Waited till later on in life when they had a ton of life experience, and that makes them better at their jobs.
Absolutely.
Richard Bowen says, keep up the good work. Your deputies are the best, doing an excellent job. And then Tango Echo Delta Brown. That's a long name. Tango Echo Delta Brown. You said Sandestin Security was a force multiplier during the shooting response. Is Sandestin Security armed?
No, and we didn't need them to be armed. What we needed them to be was exactly what they were in that regard, which was people that there were so many points of exit and egress and coming in and out that we had to be able to manage that. We had deputies, investigators at Sacred Heart Hospital, the emergency room. We had deputies, investigators at the parking lot, the wooded lot in front of Sandestin. We had deputies, investigators at the site of the officer-involved shooting. We had deputies, investigators at Baytown, and we had a centralized incident command. So we had people working at 5 locations. We also had to prevent people from driving through these scenes because we were looking for shell casings, magazines from weapons, getting videotape. That only was much more difficult if we did not have the help of Sandestin Security blocking off roads. And I think the important thing to take out of this is simply this: knowing your role and being willing to help in that role is more important than doing something maybe beyond your training or capability. It doesn't make it less important. In fact, for us, it was extremely important for them to give us some assistance there. So it was a good working relationship that night.
Yeah. And there's a couple other questions, and we're kind of we've kind of gone over this a couple of times, but just for people's edification. Rhonda is asking, tell us what you do know for a fact about the shooting. And then Tammy's asking, shooter was supposedly here to attend a bachelor party. Did anyone at this party get shot, or are they a victim?
So I've actually answered, I think, pretty much all of that. And I want to be careful about, again, restating it. I'll just very quickly restate, if what I said at the press conference is still factually accurate, there is really no new information that I would release outside that press conference other than to say there's no relationship, to our knowledge, between anybody involved in the shooting and the shooter. That's the short version of it.
And then Marcia wants to know where he was from and if he has a history of violence.
Warner Robins, Georgia, and he does have a history of violence. That was a sexual battery case, but that was pled down in 2019. But the case was from a couple of years previous to that.
And not in our state.
Not in our state, no.
Yes. Michael White on YouTube. The new red light at Dune Lake Elementary in 98 is difficult to see, especially westbound on 98, because of the spacing between the red light and the flashing school zone. Just an FYI.
We'll pass that along to DOT and make them be aware of that. I had not heard that, but that's something we need to look at, because the last thing you want somebody flying through there, and just especially now that school's back in.
Okay. And then Nikolov is asking, you've been doing a great job as sheriff in our county. What are some things that you believe can be improved in the agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things, that we can always continue to get better. Even I said, we did, I think, a very professional, good job in that shooting. But we'll sit down and try and critique where can we better. We do an after-action report. So we try to do that everywhere we can. There are some mechanical things, so radios, some communication things. We've got a $40 million project out right now to rebuild radio systems. That affects South Walton Fire District, affects Walton County Fire Rescue, affects all the sheriff's office. It's important to be able to communicate. That's a big deal. It needs to be improved. We're looking at, we always try to evaluate our equipment. One of the things that we know now, we're in the process of putting red dot sights on all our rifles. But you have to remember, there were people a couple years ago who said you have no business having a rifle. And we've used those rifles multiple times to stop shooters. Multiple times, including the other night. Yeah. But again, you get the couch experts to say, well, you don't need these rifles. We can argue that all day long. I think we're clearly adding staff. Right now, it's about getting the quality of the right staff. We would rather work short than have the wrong people, because we got to have the right people. But I think probably two of the biggest things is we continue to upgrade our training. which is important. And that's in all modalities. That's fire rescue, that's communication, that's detention, that's animal control. Everything we do, we want to continue to get better in our training and to make sure that our equipment is current, it's correct. You don't want to give your firefighters and have their own breathing apparatus, right? You don't want them to have outdated fire protective equipment. You want to make sure that your fire engines work, that your ambulances work. You want to make sure that your deputies have, the proper sights, the proper weapons, that it's kept up and maintained. So there's a lot of what I call continually upgrading incrementally, kind of stacking pennies to make a dollar, if you will.
Continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement, yeah. So that's a long-winded way of saying we're always trying to improve a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Tango Echo wants to know, are you losing SLEERs? Will your radio traffic be encrypted? Our radio traffic has been encrypted.
Yeah, our radio traffic, we will not give up encrypted radios, obviously. That's too important to the safety of and the privacy of the citizens. We're going out for an invitation to negotiate. I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be, but we have certain parameters that we are demanding certain amount of coverage. We're going to run the contract ourselves this time. The Sheriff's Office didn't run it last time. The BCC actually ran that contract. We're going to run the contract this time because we understand what we need and to make sure that they meet certain parameters. That these should meet military specs, quite frankly. And it just needs to be done thoughtfully and well. But I can't tell you which one. There's really only about 3 players in this space, 3 or 4 players in the radio space. This is the biggest project we've taken on in a long time. We thought we would be building a substation in South Walton at this point, or a new substation, or an emergency operations center. But the ability to communicate is more important right now. And so everything is focused on making sure that we can all communicate.
Okay. Let me make sure sorry, I'm just trying to track through questions. Jeanette Klein, it's a blessing to the community that the deputies were nearby, heard the shots, and took action.
Yeah, and literally, we just had somebody the other day say, well, you don't need so many deputies. Maybe people should wait a little longer for a deputy. I said, how about no? Yeah. How about no? I don't think you should wait exceptionally long for a deputy or a firefighter, EMS. This is what I'm a little bit of a budget hawk myself. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, a fundamental responsibility of government is to provide public safety, to keep its citizens safe. It's literally like the first thing that you should be doing. Everything else, from my opinion, is second. So, yeah, I want as much reasonable staff from public safety as it can have to keep our citizens and our tourists, visitors, whatever, safe.
Okay. Let me see. Rebecca Harris Schmidt, why won't you allow our deputies to wear outer bulletproof vests?
I don't like them. Yeah, I don't like the look of them. We have T&E'd them. We've looked at them. I may ultimately give in one day. It has to match. Probably the biggest thing for me was Harris. I think it was last name.
Yes.
I think probably the biggest thing to me is we're not going to look like a third world army, right? So we're not going to have magazines up here and all this stuff. So is it conceivable? We're actually testing some of them now. I just don't actually like anything I've seen, which is we want to make sure that when you see them, that they are clearly a deputy sheriff, right? So if we go to a outer vest carrier, and again, we're testing some now, they need to make sure that nothing is on the front so that it's clearly a deputy sheriff and that they look professional and it doesn't pose a risk to safety or the back. So,
so we talk about branding a lot.
Yeah.
And you don't like them, and I like because of the brand and the community calls for more of a customer service approach in your eyes.
Sure. And if we can get one that looks appropriate, right? That looks appropriate. You have to understand, style gets into a matter of opinion. My opinion, your opinion, somebody else's perceived. But we have a brand here as well too, right? And our brand is not going to be a militaristic brand. We have to do those hard things. We have to do those hard things like we did the other night. But we also have to do some soft things, And so for us, it's important that there's a distinguishment between being a deputy sheriff and being a soldier. Mm-hmm. I just think that's important. But I also want our deputies safe, and I want them cool. I don't want them overheated. So we're going to look at some of those. But listen, if I let some people, they would be dressed in black, wearing campaign hats and balaclavas every day, right? So there's got to be a little bit of balance in it.
Mm-hmm. Barbara Riddick, I was driving westbound on Highway 98 west of Watersound when a wheelbarrow fell off the back of a truck. That's scary.
Right.
When airborne and landed right in front of my car, I hit it. It did minimal damage, but it could have been much worse. I really don't have any recourse. How are trucks monitored for what they carry if it's not constrained?
So typically DOT, Commercial Vehicle Enforcement, handles that. However, if you see one like it's a smaller pickup and it's something like that, you absolutely can call us. We'll stop and say, look, you need to secure that load. We'll certainly take an action like that if we see it, if we're made aware of it. I would say that, one of the things you can do when that happens is go ahead and call a deputy or the highway patrol. Let us note it. Let us make sure maybe we can find the vehicle. Maybe we can identify, but it maybe even help you with your insurance by having a copy of a report.
Yeah.
If it comes to that point, you may choose not to do that, but I would go ahead and report that for sure.
Yeah. Todd Rourke says leadership is 95% communication.
Amen.
Amen. Rebecca, she asked the same question again. Candy Sheets, great job. Derek said, tactical is the way to go. Bob and Sharon Parks, can we raise the speed on 20th Street to 35? Once we go past the vocational school, 25 is almost impossible to keep.
Sure. That's like the city council would probably have to make, and Defuniac would probably have to make that decision. I think that's a city road. In fact, I'm almost positive it's a city road. So if you want to reach out to your city manager there, Mike Barker, or one of your city councilmen, just kind of let them know that you'd like to see that. They study that when they make a decision to go up on the speed limits, and I'm sure they would entertain looking at that.
Yeah. Trey Bizzo on YouTube asked, what is the average response time for a deputy sheriff? This was obviously a lucky situation that the deputies were nearby.
And had their windows rolled down, yeah.
How much longer would it have been if they weren't?
Yeah, so truthfully, there's a couple of things to that. I don't think you're not going to hear me say that didn't have an impact, them being right there, right? The county is broken up to individual districts, and inside the districts are subzones. So, the size of the zone is really dictated in a lot of ways by how much population there is. Let me give you an example. The density in Miramar is higher than the density in Red Bay. Fair enough?
Yes.
However, you still have to have a deputy in the Red Bay community. You can't just say, well, there's not as many people so they don't get anybody, or Paxton, or Gaskin, or Glendale, or Mossy Head, right? Those still have to have a mandatory coverage. Does it take longer to get there in some cases? Yeah, it will, because of the distances involved. So you could have a deputy every 100 square miles in some areas, and then in some places, if you're in Freeport or Defuniac, where it's more densely populated, you're going to have more of a deputy. The other thing that really determines how response time is the nature of the call. If it's an emergency call, if it's shots fired, your response time is much faster than, say, if you call and said somebody stole my car. If they stole your car and they're not there, we probably not going to drive 90, 100 miles an hour to get there because it's already happened. So responses are based on priority 1, 2, 3, or 4 calls. So it's kind of a long way of saying this. It just depends where you're at. I mean, it really does depend on, if you're in Mossy Head or if you're in Defuniac, if somebody happens to be there, it may be a quicker response time. And down here in South Walton, where I'm at when we're filming this, traffic can play an important part in that too, about how much you can get up and down. So it really just depends where you're at and what the priority of the call is. Hopefully that's not too long-winded, but it's kind of a complicated issue.
Jada on YouTube says hello, and she goes to Walton Middle School. We're so happy to have you. Don Scott says, officers should be monitoring speed, especially coming out of Defuniac Springs. My brother was killed off Highway 90 in Davis Lane in a senseless accident. Let's do our job and stop driving and texting and reckless driving. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and I hear about people dying on U.S. Highway 90 almost every week.
Yeah, traffic, listen, first of all, we're sorry for your loss, because that's the worst thing that can happen, to get those phone calls that your loved one is not there. It's absolutely true. The truth of the matter is, we talked about this before, but in every military action and every terrorist attack around the world involving U.S. citizens since 1990, you've had about 40,000 deaths. There were 38,000 people killed in traffic accidents last year in the United States. Every one of them is preventable. That's what becomes frustrating for all of us, not just here, but all these families that lose someone. It's extremely frustrating. it's the one thing that we know is preventable, right? But somehow we as a society just accept that it happens. And I can tell you, every time we stop somebody, people are mad. They're angry. And, it doesn't matter how fast they're going for the most part. Some people take it and they understand, right? But I can show you video after video when people are stopped going, why aren't you stopping a tourist? Why aren't you stopping this? Or why aren't you do that? I saw somebody else speeding. Why didn't you stop them? That's a little bit of something my children say, well, why not somebody else? We do the best we can. We want to do more. We're going to try and add more traffic units. We want to try and continue to move forward. We have to have a little balance. You can't have 100% enforcement on everything. I think everybody would understand that. There's simply not enough police professionals anywhere in the country to do that. But traffic is an important part of what we do, for sure.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of people who want us to focus more on traffic, and then the opposite end of the spectrum where they think traffic is just a way for us to raise money. And
and I will say real quick, so give or take a $95 million budget, traffic does not pay. We don't pay our bills on traffic. That goes back into a county general revenue. So we don't fund ourselves off traffic tickets or anything like that. There are places that do. I've actually didn't know that, and I think I mentioned this a couple of years ago. There are places up north that they use in the municipalities to fund some of their enforcement. That's not the case in Florida. We don't do that here.
Okay. I think for the most part, we're caught up on questions. Lindsay, if you see one that I missed, just shout it out to me.
Not one question about the beach. We took
just spoiled it for me.
Yeah, that's okay. If it comes at this point, it's because we brought it up. We literally went through that without one question about the beach, which is incredible.
Mm-hmm. So, we did publish our standard operating procedure on our website.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So anybody who wants to know what our approach is going to be.
I think we'll be back online too before Halloween. So we'll get you guys ready with some stuff going on for Halloween. The fair is coming up in the next couple of weeks. So it's always a good event down in Defuniak Springs. If you're down here and you haven't been to Defuniak, that's a great opportunity with some great little restaurants and a really neat downtown area for you to get in there and go and see. So we're excited about that. We've got fall break coming up for a lot of schools across the southeast that'll be coming out. So we'll see us start getting busy in the next couple of weeks. And then it'll slow up a little bit until Thanksgiving. Then we'll get busy again down here. So, a lot of stuff going on. We're having a good relationship with our school district. We're trying to work with our principals and Mr. Hughes, who is always so responsive. Russell Hughes, your superintendent, does a great job for you. We always try to work with him and Charlie Morris, their security head, and to keep your kids safe. And we try and look where we can do things better there. Our fire rescue folks have been extremely busy. We've had a couple major fires primarily north of the bay, and they've done a great job there in Freeport and just really hustling. And Choctaw, I said Freeport, and the Choctaw Beach as well. So so Corey just reminded me, our Choctaw Beach station is finally coming in line, and so the groundbreaking started today. We waited several years to get that thing going, but it's moving. And then Glendale fire station is the ground starting to be pushed there, so we're excited. And again, that's one of those things that's in our budget. That's a $4 million station on one.
But we also
$2.5 million on the other.
Did our due diligence and went out and got some grants too.
Yeah, we did that to help refer, but the money's still put in our budget, so it's kind of that kind of thing. We hope to build fire stations this next year to start working on in Pleasant Ridge and Mossy Head, as well as potentially 3280. But just understand when I say that's about $12 million right there in line with it, But
our community is growing
fast. For the growth. You got to do that. You got to build these stations, and so it's important. But part of being good partners.
Derek has a question about where do you feel we need change improvement when it comes to the roads in South Walton?
That's a long time. We got another hour for that. So the bottom line
we'll
is
do a podcast on it.
Listen, the bottom line is these roads should have been worked on 10 plus years ago. I'm not pointing my finger at anybody. It literally should have been handled. So it's kind of like planting a tree, right? When's the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago. When's the next best time? It's today. There are a couple of things to slow the speed down and restrict the constriction, or restrict this where the traffic is coming together really tight. I think obviously we've had some improvement down in the Miramar area, but there's a couple places that need turning lanes really bad. And I'll tell you one of the biggest ones for me where I see accidents right now is coming down between 393 or 390, right there at, help me out, Church Street. There needs to be a parallel road there to take some of an east-west road north of 98 to help alleviate some of the traffic, because as people try to come out there at Church Street and the next street down, and I'm blanking out on what that is, it is a huge, I've almost hit somebody. I've had people almost hit me there. I've been hit on 98, so trust me, I get it. That road right there, I think some type of east-west road from 393 down would be important. I just think it would really help, and it could alleviate some of the traffic. And there's a couple places that really need turning lanes. The other thing is you got to realize that we still need, and I know people are going to get angry when I say this, but my job, I value people's lives over top of everything else. There needs to be another access off 30A between 38 and 98. And I know that makes people angry. Talk about cutting through the state forest or through there, but people's lives are a priority. And so that road is not designed for the amount of traffic. And you have to understand Camp Creek Road is actually a private road. We need another road through there somewhere, and I hope the board looks at doing that. And I know that's on their talk. The other roadway, quite frankly, is through Owl's Head. We need something from the back of Windswept through Owl's Head. The board said they wanted to look at it. They seem willing to do that, but that's another area where we could help a lot.
Yeah.
The light that's going in place at 331 and Old Business 331, crucial. So
Yeah.
a lot of places need some work.
Yeah. Charlie Comer says hello.
Hello, Mr.
Charlie. Erica says Rock Hill Road is horrible. Construction trucks, concrete trucks cutting
Needs
across 38.
Separate turning lane back through there, absolutely.
Candy Sheets is asking, what are alcohol rules at the beach?
Don't have glass bottles.
Yeah, I think it's, and B of H, obviously.
Yeah, it is.
Bob Parks, we live in Pinehurst Estates and see people speeding like they're driving at the Indy 500 once they pass the school. And then Marcia on YouTube is asking, can an average citizen request a copy of a traffic camera recording of an incident? So I don't know that we have, do we have traffic cameras in Walton?
Yeah, no, so you have to get contact with state DOT. I don't think they do.
I think the only ones are on I-10.
Yeah, I don't think we do, but you'd have to check on that, yeah.
And then Max Schulman, what additional security measures do you recommend Sandestin put into place so the chance of a similar incident is prevented?
So I'm not sure that there's anything they could have done to prevent that. Just very bluntly, I don't know what could have been done to prevent that. I think if you have somebody who has made a decision to do evil and do harm like that, it's tough situation. Now, are there things we would like to see? That's a little bit different. Better cameras is always a plus. Better lighting, certainly. But as far as something that I can personally think of they could have done, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is.
I know who this is. It takes me a second, Tango Echo
Ted.
Delta Brown is Ted Brown. Hi, Ted.
Keen police mind, Mr. Bridget.
Mother. It's like, I'm tired. Okay. Are there more flock cameras coming to the Freeport area soon?
We're working on it. Yes, we're trying to add cameras where we can, and again, it's a little bit of a budgetary issue. We actually suggested the Board of County Commissioners that they put up cameras at beach accesses. We thought that was a good, and we asked them to consider doing beach ambassador. They actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you consider doing it?" And then they would say, "Well, we shouldn't give the sheriff money to do it." Well, the sheriff wasn't asking for money to do it. We just told you what we thought you ought to consider doing. So I'm hoping that they'll consider putting some cameras at the beach access points. I think that's a safety issue, like places like Dogwood and the other. I know Commissioner Johns was in favor of it. I've talked to her before, and I think Commissioner, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I know that she and I and a couple of folks have talked about it. But that's the board's decision. They can decide whether or not they want to put their cameras down there. And if they're afraid that they don't want in my budget, then put it in your budget. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Take it out of TDCs, whatever you need to do. But I think cameras would be important to help down there. As far as the flock, we are currently trying to put cameras in all the county parks to make sure they're not vandalized. There's a lot of money spent on these parks, and so we want to make sure that they're safe. And there's a plan, but it just takes a little bit of time to do that.
Yeah.
Helen McCall, we're working on getting that one as it's being rebuilt. So yeah, we're trying to put them in the parks first.
Yeah. Stephen Menschel is asking, I'm sorry I didn't get this to you sooner and that it's long, but with that being said, I was recently at a social event and was listening to several people talk about what a citizen could do or should not do in reference to a home invasion or a trespasser. For the most part, they were way off base. Shocking. If possible, please discuss and inform folks on what they can do and what they shouldn't do in reference to a home invasion, trespass. Thank you for all the
Okay, so I want to be careful how I say this because those are two wildly different things: a home invasion and a trespass. Florida law, and really the law in pretty much all 50 states from this standpoint, allows you are not under a legal obligation to retreat in your home. What does that mean? Your home is your castle. You'll hear this referred to as the castle doctrine. If somebody is in your home and have forced their way, and I'm going to say a robbery in the middle of the night, you can use any force up to and including deadly force to protect your home and family, protect yourself and your family in your home. That's the short version, okay? There's a lot of factors involved in that. You can't invite somebody in, tell them to leave, and then shoot them. That's not home invasion, right? They can't knock on your door and ask for directions and you shoot them through the door. That's not home invasion, right? Home invasion is the forceful entry into a home, or the surreptitious entry into the home. Now, what is surreptitious? It means that surreptitiously that I broke in through a window, I come crawling in the middle of the night. They are subject to forfeit their life up at that point. That is a decision that each individual citizen has to make, whether or not they are capable of doing that, whether or not they're capable of using it, or whether it makes better sense to flee and call 911. I don't know. I can't answer that question for you. But just to be clear, from a legal standpoint, you are not under an obligation to retreat in your home. And so if you use deadly force in your home against a robber, somebody who has forcefully entered your home like that, that's defensible under Florida law, the short version.
I'm going
to add something to this because it's important. And for those of you that are legal minded, you can review this. It's called Tennessee versus Garner, pretty famous U.S. case. What you can't do is come home and find them stealing your stereo, and as they're leaving, shoot them in the back when they're leaving the door, right? You can't just shoot them in the back because they broke into your house. They need to be posing an articulable threat to you or your family. So,
I think that would make a great podcast topic.
Yeah, we may need to do that.
And even as simple as like, and you and I talk about all the time. Some people don't know the difference between burglary and robbery, trespassing, home invasion,
absolutely.
Police officer.
Because you're using those
deputy.
words interchange when they have hugely different legal ramifications. So
sure.
We hear that a lot with assault and battery, not knowing the difference between those two.
Yeah.
You say robbery and you really mean burglary. You say so that's probably not a bad idea, but we probably could focus around the castle doctrine and the stand your ground law, which are different. They have some of the same elements in it. But I want to be very clear what I'm saying about this. You have to be able to articulate fear for that to become a deadly force situation.
Yeah. Ted Brown wants to know who pays for the deputies at Nick's concerts and events. I see county taxpayer funded arrow boards, signboards, and deputies at these events. The emergency management resources have deployed their sign message boards.
So to be clear, any off-duty, those are off-duty details typically paid by the employer, like if they're working at Sandestin or something like that. So like at a campfire or a bonfire at Nick's, a big event like that, it's paid for by Nick's. Now, let me give you an exception to that. There are some exceptions to that. So let's just say we're in Hammock Bay and you're having a big community event. And for whatever reason, there was nobody to work the off-duty detail. Our district commanders will look at it and go, is this such a big event that it makes sense public safety-wise to have somebody there to help with traffic? So think of a big football game and everybody's getting out. If the school, for whatever reason, said we couldn't pay this, you would still expect a deputy to come and solve it because of the size of the event.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense to you. But typically those are paid by businesses. Now, and I will tell you that a lot of businesses, probably I would say 40% of our requests go unfilled. We simply don't have the manpower to fill every request that we're asked for.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the signboards and stuff like that, sometimes that's just good public policy. if you're going to have a large event, to sometimes do that. So I don't know how they decide, but I could certainly understand if you're going to have 500 to 1,000 people put on a highway, and you're having a special permit, it would make sense to put a sign. So
Yeah. Bailey Goodwin says, coming in late, but want to say thank you and give a shout out to your deputies. They handled the active shooter incident. Feel extremely safe with what you do for our community. Grateful is an understatement.
They do a great job.
Joanna Jackson, I'm coming in late, so I don't know if this has been discussed, but we need red light cameras. This is something you're vehemently against.
Yeah, so listen, here, the red light cameras, I have a problem with them as a funding mechanism, right? And I can tell you they are hugely unpopular with the public, wildly unpopular with the public. The truth of the matter is there's sometimes different people driving the car. There's a lot of different things it becomes a funding mechanism for a private business. So the way that works is a private business does it, and they get a percentage of the tickets. And I just don't think that's their place to do that. I don't think that a private business should be making money off of citing the public. So if there was a way that was another way to handle it with, where maybe the BCC managed that part of it, I might could get there on that, but I don't like the idea of funding a private business with it.
Yeah. Bradley Touchstone, what are the rules governing electric bikes on 30A shared use paths, especially related to electric bikes with child seats?
So it's a brake horsepower issue on what they can and can't do. They are allowed to use that. It's under the brake horsepower set aside by the county. In other words, they can use them on the multi-use bike path. It's a little similar to moped, but the difference is the total horsepower is less, so that they can use it. I'll double check that, Bradley, but I'm 99% sure that's accurate. So yes, the short version is yes, they can use it on the.
Okay. Mike Lesage on Facebook. It seems like all the new signals on 98 have blinking yellow left turn lights after the other lights turn green. However, the older lights, like Mac Bayou, left turns red instead. I feel like the older left lights need to also be blinking yellow, allowing for a better traffic flow.
We can shoot that question up to Region 1 DOT and ask them what I don't know if that's where similar to a computer they can ghost it or flash it from a distance, or if the light just doesn't have the capability of doing that, but we can get the answer to that.
Yeah.
Or they're really DOTs, the people that handle that.
Yeah, and that's because that's a state road.
Yeah.
331.
Yeah, maybe DOT handles
that. Jennifer Jones, just make sure the ballpark concession doesn't lose their chicken wraps.
Oh, what is that? Oh,
I'm not sure.
I don't know that.
I missed the.
I'm all about a chicken wrap, so.
Yeah, me too. I'm about that life, about that. Especially right now because I'm starving. Yeah. Erica says, is there any way to utilize prisoners for trash pickup and litter? Used to see them all the time to help with trash and ditch cleanup, etc. It did help.
Yeah. So one of the things that you want me to answer that real quick?
Yeah. Well, but also that there's a difference between prisoners, like DOC prisoners, and our inmates at the jail.
One of the biggest things that happened, obviously post-COVID, but there's a different set of rules when people can be let out of the jail to work on some of these things. So like we have, for instance, prisoners that work, inmates at the county jail that work at the county landfill. And, maybe somebody that runs a work crew in Freeport or a work crew for one of the counties. The biggest issue we have is they have to meet a certain classification to go outside. So to be able to go outside the fence of a county jail, remember county jail is different than a state prison. They have to, and the majority of the people there tend to bond out very quickly. So once they're sentenced and they can go on these work crews, they have to have meet certain criteria. So we put as many people out as we possibly can because it's in our best interest to do that. It's in the best interest of the inmate to do that as well too.
Yeah. And we have a lot of programs and vocational programs that we help with
a lot of rules on when and how you put people out of a facility.
Yeah. Going back, as Stephen Menschel said, you covered the home invasions. Kindly have the sheriff discuss what citizens can do in reference to trespassing issues.
So the really short version under Florida law is this. You can use reasonable, and boy, it's the word that gets every attorney turning sideways, reasonable force to remove someone from your premises. So what is reasonable force? That's what a judge is probably going to decide. So reasonable force is not, for instance, hey, I want you to leave. And you say, well, I don't want to go right now. I still want to talk about it. And then you hit them in the head with a flashlight. That's not reasonable, right? And so that's kind of an oversimplification of it. What I always say is this: if you've asked somebody to leave your property and they're refusing to leave your property, call a deputy sheriff. Let us be the arbitrator of that. Let us work. We're going to physically remove them from the property. And remember, you don't need anybody's permission to trespass somebody from your property. They don't have to do anything. You can say, I don't want Mike Adkinson at my property, and we will trespass them. And a lot of people don't understand that because this happens a lot. People will say, well, I didn't do anything. You don't have to do anything. A private property owner can restrict anyone they want from entering their property. They can also revoke your right to be on their property at any time they want. So if somebody is at your house and is visiting and whatever, they become offensive and or they're staying too late, you can ask them to leave. If they do not leave, you tell them again, I want you to leave. If they choose not to leave, they are trespassing after warning, right? So one of two things has to happen there. Either A, you convince them to leave, or you use some type of force to remove them, or B, you call the sheriff's office. Those are really the only two options there, right? I mean, pragmatically. But I just caution people because you don't want to get in a situation where you're pulling a gun to tell somebody to leave your house. So, if they're not posing an imminent threat to you, and again, imminent threat becomes a totally different situation, then it's a self-defense issue. But they're not posing an imminent threat, I would call the sheriff's office immediately and say, this is my residence. I live here. I've asked someone to leave. They're refusing to leave. We're going to come and put them out, and we're going to either A, arrest them for trespass after warning if they refuse to leave, or B, issue them a trespass at your request for them not to come back on the property. So hopefully that's kind of a very vanilla version of how you handle trespass. People get trespass widely confused with a restraining order, and that's probably something we ought to talk about one day too, the difference between trespass and a restraining order. Important factors again, there doesn't have to be any reason to have somebody trespass. If you own the property or you're responsible for the property, you may trespass someone for a period. You may ask them to leave at any point as you deem appropriate. If they refuse to leave, you may call the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office will remove them from the property. Can you, and here's the warning, can you use force to remove some property? You can, but you better be right, and you better be prepared for what the consequences of that potentially are. So,
does a trespass warning expire? Do they expire, trespasses?
We typically keep a trespass warning about a year and say the court is held at about a year that, you need to re-up them depending on what the circumstances were.
Okay.
Because you don't want to have one 20 years later from apartment complex, and everybody's even forgot what they're there for. And
yeah.
Right.
Derek Gossett, is the Guardian program for the schools filled by deputies?
No, it's not. Actually, we have some really good guardians in the school system. Those folks are people that are trained by the sheriff's office. They are employees of the Walton County School District. They work with our staff, and there's a close cooperation. We vet them and make sure that they're trained and have the appropriate equipment. I have to tell you, I have been really pleased with the Guardian program here in Walton County. They've gotten some really good quality guardians. Some of them used to work for us, a retired warden on there. We have some former military people. I think that program has worked really well. I think if you have an interest in that, you can certainly talk to Charlie Morris at the Walton County School District and those folks. But yeah, I've been very pleased with what we've seen out of those folks.
And so they're a force multiplier for us in the schools. Are they armed?
Yes, they are armed. I provide them firearms. They are under my authority for the sake of any enforcement action they take, but they're actually employees of the school district. So.
I'm going back to Marilyn on Facebook. Is it up to a business owner to put proper signage of exit and enter on their property? I almost had my front end taken out several times because people go in the do not enter.
You're asking me something I honestly don't know the answer to. I wish I could tell you I did, but I don't know the answer to that. I suspect there are some rules with building that cover that. I just actually don't know what they are. Apologize. Building and planning probably could answer that for you with a code or your code enforcement. That's really more in the code venue than it is from our standpoint. Apologize. I just don't want to give you the wrong answer.
Yeah.
Told you I'd tell you something I didn't know.
Oh. Laura Lee Sparks, she asked the same question I did. Does a trespass expire? And then Derek Gossett is asking if the school district gives the guardians open carry rights. Can they open carry?
No, well, that's a policy decision made by the school district, and my understanding is they do not open. I think they wear a blazer over the top of it. I don't know that for sure, though, Derek. I may be wrong about that.
Okay.
But I can grant them authority to do that. I leave that up to the school district to tell me. I think Mr. Hughes, Mr. Morris have made a decision to do that, to wear blazers over the top, if memory serves. So.
Okay.
But I could be absolutely wrong. They may have changed that policy tomorrow. Could they legally do it under my authority? Yes, they could. While at the school district.
Cody Thompson, can the sheriff's fire service go south of the bay if there's a need, or South Walton come north if there's a need?
Oh yeah, and we routinely. We would absolutely work back and forth. We go anywhere. There's a close working relationship. South Walton Fire District, Defuniak Springs Fire, any of those districts for sure. Yes, they can go back across the bay as needed help. And we do that routinely. They've helped us out. We help them out, whatever is needed.
Elizabeth Parker is asking where we submit suggestions for future podcasts.
Oh, good. Email those to Mr. Bridnia, and let us know what you want to hear about.
Yeah, I would love that.
But I think we talked about, what are we doing next, Corey? You said we talked about it earlier.
We were talking about doing the difference between
a sheriff's office and a police department.
Yes, and then we wanted to do a use of force one.
Yeah, we talked about doing use of force, and we may add one about castle doctrine and stand your ground. I mean, it's such a that's a kind of a really big issue, so we may do that as well too.
And we just want to delve into issues and put it in layman's terms for people to understand, because some of this stuff is really complicated.
Yeah, and as the gentleman said earlier, what happened? We get this on our Facebook page a lot. Somebody will ask something, and somebody will provide them what they think the law is or what they think, and they're absolutely wrong. Mm-hmm. Absolutely wrong, and we're always scared that's going to get somebody in trouble.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go back to the budget. It's very similar to the budget. We literally have people saying things that are not only factually accurate, they're 100% wrong, and they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And so we try very hard to make sure that, particularly if it gets somebody arrested or do the wrong things, hey, look, what they're telling you is not accurate. You need to be careful with that.
Okay. James Pittman, Lieutenant Pittman, your District 1 lieutenant, says guardians open carry just like deputies with a gun belt.
Okay.
They do not open carry off duty. So if they're off school premises or if they're off duty, they don't open carry. And I know you're shocked, but it's 6:45 and we're caught up on questions.
We're caught up?
Yeah.
Inconceivable.
Wow.
So,
and I think we mentioned everything we wanted to.
Yeah, I think we had a lot going on.
We must apologize. I must apologize because Shane Abbott and Senator Jay Trumbull were doing a delegation meeting at the exact same time as our Sheriff Live.
So I did, for the record, I called and apologized reached out and contacted Senator Trumbull and Representative Abbott. We just didn't realize that at the time. They're actually across the street right now, and I imagine they're still going. So if you have questions for those folks, they're both very open and willing to hear your questions. We encourage you to go over and stop in and see those folks and your local representation as they get ready to the legislative session starting in January. So yeah, that was a little bit of schedule snafu on us. We didn't quite see that, but
and by us he means me.
No, I mean
that's my fault.
I mean us.
But yeah, when will we be back? A couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll do maybe right at Halloween or somewhere in that time frame. Podcast suggestions, email us to questions you don't feel like we answered correctly. Shoot it. We'll see about trying and get you an answer. Some kind of follow-up, something we said incorrectly, let me know. We certainly are capable of doing that wrong, and we'll be more than happy to try and get you an answer. So with that, we appreciate you. Thank you, and stay safe.